Welcome everybody to the Red G Fox channel. Thank you so much for joining us. So today we have an episode that I think the rating is correct. And for me personally, I get frustrated at this episode at time, especially with Lamont. My gosh, Lamont really, you gotta have your dad's back, and it's your house as well. But he's so concerned with being honest, just like he is when Grady gets those extra checks. Now he turns into the Good Samaritan. Don't forget, Lamont, you were trying to swindle the very first episode when you were going to sell that little piece at the auction, and you were trying to bid it up. So Lamont sometimes can be two-faced. But this episode is This Land is Whose Land? Yes! Where Julio and Fred try to debate on what's the legal boundary line on our property. Because, quick summary, Fred, before I get to that, IMDb gives it a 7.4, and I am completely fine with that. Maybe 7.5, just from the fact that anything with Julio I love because he's one of my favorite characters on the show. And this is a good example of why. No matter what happens, no matter if Fred's mean or if things go for Julio's way, he always shows kindness and says, hey, in the end we know he doesn't really care. You can still keep the land out. It's his property just as long as he can put his stuff there. He doesn't care how Fred has it. That's why I always like Julio. And I have a real neighbor like that, so I actually love that. It reminds me of him. This Land is Whose Land? IMDb gives it 7.4, as I said. This is the third season, episode 16. Now, we just came off almost every episode up to this point has been 8.0 or higher. A couple 7.9s in there and stuff. So this is a huge drop when it comes to it. And when you watch it, right? If you go, like I have been with our channel, watching each episode in a row, and then you reach to this, you will feel a drop off. There's not as much humor. There's not, you just got basically just 4 people in it. It's I don't know, it just feels like it's missing something else. And maybe that's that huge key moment, right? Even when we say Wine, Women, and Esther, the beginning was great. The ending was great with the dancing. The middle, was okay. And that's what this episode feels like. A lot of, funny moments. So, casual ones. Not a bad episode, but I think 7.4 is justice. The summary, this is it. Fred's got, he's doing some cleaning. Lamont says, hey, don't touch some of that stuff. That's Julio's. I allowed him to keep it on there. Fred is not happy. He said, get this Puerto Rican junk out of here. The foreigners don't understand the language, that this is our spots and not his spots. And Julio says, no, it's 10 paces off my house. And now it's a debate. Fred gets a surveyor, and it turns out maybe Julio was right, and it's going to bite Fred in the butt. And no thanks to Lamont. So that's it for the summary. Let's get to familiar faces. Okay, familiar faces. We have Rodolfo Hoyos Jr. He plays basically the surveyor. And it's so funny when he comes in and Fred's like, what's your name? And then he hears the name. We'll get to that when in the episode breakdown. But I love Fred's reaction to that. That's one of the few bright spots that really make me laugh out loud in this one. He passed away in 1983 at the age of 67. That's pretty young. He did over 180 movies and shows. That's crazy. We've seen other people do 100, and that's like, wow, that's maxing out. 180, that's outstanding. Now, a lot of them were early on in his career, were uncredited. At least the first, so many that I checked out were uncredited. But his final appearance in TV was in 1979, Charlie's Angels, the last one on as a TV show. His first was uncredited called Masquerade in Mexico in 1945. So he'd been doing stuff for a lot before that, early in his career. He appeared in 2 episodes of I Love Lucy. One of them, he was one of Ricky's family members. So that's cool. That's one of the greatest shows of all time, or at least most popular. He also did the George and Gracie for George Burns, the George and Gracie show. The Untouchables, Maverick. Now here he gets on a run of Maverick, The Rifleman, and many other westerns. That's something he did a lot of. Throughout it, he did a lot of westerns and movies and shows. That was a big part of his career. Coincidentally, ironically, and funny, like we said, a lot of our side characters, the actors on these, he also appeared in Ironside and Cannon, a huge familiar theme for a lot of our people on Familiar Faces. So you can see, man, that some of these actors were recycled a lot through a lot of these similar shows, and they were all great at it. So why not, right? If you're really good at it, keep using them. That's it on Familiar Faces. We just had one today.
I didn't know that.
Okay, fun facts. Nothing really great. There was nothing outstanding here. I mean, there's a few side ones like, hey, you could see actual in both sides of Fred's arm, his tattoos this time. A lot of times his sleeves are rolled down. There's not too many episodes you see his tattoos, but this is one you can remember, hey, check those out on his forearms. But probably the best fun fact is we get several references in this about the president and vice president in the episode. One of them where Fred says, he's talking about, hey, Lamont says he's taking a bribe, and Fred's like, why would I try to bribe you? You're not no vice president. Now, I'll be honest, I didn't even get that because I wasn't around at that time, and when I watch the show later, I know the Nixon ones, right? Which we do get one, but I didn't know it was Spiro Agnew who got busted for, I think when he was a governor or mayor in another town, he had taken bribes and got in trouble for that. Then we had another one where Fred is saying, hey, no man is above the law unless you're the president. And even now, that doesn't work. Referring to Nixon, who was deep into Watergate at this time, and we knew he was busted and caught. So that's why Fred says that. So we get a couple references with the president and vice president, just in case you didn't catch that. Pretty obvious with Nixon, but I always missed the vice president, Spiro Agnew, at that time. That's it with fun facts.
Julio, would you stop that? Don't tell me to stop it. Tell Julio to stop it. He's the one who brought this stuff over in my
All right,
yard.
here we go with the breakdown. It's funny to see Fred at the beginning. He's actually like, they're cleaning up Lamont's, they're getting ready to load the truck, and we never see Fred do any real work. So the fact that he's walking around and he picks up just this, you can see right here, just a little, box made of wood, and like he's gonna flip it on the truck, and he flips it and then goes to sit down on it. And Lamont's like, are you gonna help me or not? So this is one thing that, once again, there's many things in this episode that make me go, Lamont, what's your problem? So Lamont says, hey, help out, Pop. So Fred goes, picks up the tire, and then he says, well, don't pick up that. Well, then don't pick up this, this, or this, because those are all Julio's. You don't want to tell him, right? The best thing to do is don't tell him. You do the work, because he already says, he goes, I know the difference. I know it, Dad. I know which is ours and what's Julio's. Then just do that. Because now you got Fred going, well, why is Julio's stuff on here? Rightfully so, right? Let's hear it from
Then you
Fred.
have a big wide brim hat in your living room, and then cockroaches in your kitchen, and pretty soon your whole house is full of Puerto Ricans.
So Fred's not happy about it. And now he starts calling Julio, and he finally comes over, and Lamont's doing the right thing by saying, hey, you know what, we're being neighbors. Let him keep it. It's not a lot of stuff. It's not a big deal. And Fred's like, oh, you know what, this is what they do. Remember he mentioned with the cockroaches. And so Julio comes over, and now Julio, nice as can be, he's like, hey, I'm sorry, I tell him he's got the freezers, he's coming in, and he just needs a little extra space. And he's like, I don't care, get this stuff out of here. He's like, well, can I just do me one favor? Can I just keep it for a week? And Fred is so neighborly. Like, let's hear what Fred has to say.
I give you 1 week free storage.
Hey, that's great. Thank you, man.
Now, since your stuff already been here 7 days, your week is up.
I love that. Fred's like, hey, you had your week? Get it out. Time to clean up. So Julio's still a nice guy. Some neighbors have been like, pound sand, old man. So he gets it and he starts going in, but he's like mentioning how, hey, I thought I had more room. Because Fred, remember, he moved it a little bit, and it's not far enough for Fred. And Fred's saying, no, it's here. And it's all the way up to the fence on Julio's property. Julio's, no, it's 10 paces. I know. And so he does 10 paces, and Fred's blocking him. You can see right here, he's at 9. He can't even get to 10. And he said, you need to get out of my way. Let me finish this. I got to get to 10. And he's like, no, maybe you didn't underhear. And here's where Fred uses his own prejudice, his bigotry right there, because he, again, says foreigners out of country, Julio was born here. He was born in New York City, right? As he always says. He was born in New York City. He's an American, and yet Fred still sticks it to him. But let's see what Fred has to say.
Hey, Julio, what are you trying to pull?
I'm trying to pull nothing. I'm trying to count off 10 paces, but you're in the way, man.
So then they start arguing, and then Fred makes the biggest mistake. He says, your mama, and Julio's like, what? What'd you say about my mama? Even Lamont has to break it up. And we haven't seen Julio get that mad in a while, right? That was like early on, the very first time we met him. Since then, he's been pretty chill, but he got upset because you don't say anything about his mama, especially when Fred actually met her. He knows her, and so at that stage, now it's more of a serious situation. But Julio says, hey, it's cool. We'll let it slide. But Fred being Fred, nah, he can't let it slide. He's got to go now and get somebody to take care of this.
I should have been out there to stop you. Oh, you got to park the truck out in the street.
Why?
Because I got a surveyor coming here to show me the property line.
Yeah,
So,
now Lamont's, he's like, hey, don't park the truck here. He's got to go get a surveyor because he's going to prove it. The fact that Julio already said, hey, it's cool, right? I'll move my stuff. You keep it. We'll leave it as is. And he should have just left it because he's paying money. Fred, now his stubbornness is into play, his pride, right? I'll show you who's right. I'll show you what's going on. And usually Fred is with his wisdom, right? The experience. But in this one, didn't leave well enough alone. And he gets a surveyor. And when the surveyor comes, he meets him. And right away, when he looks at him, he's like, Fred's a little nervous, right? He told Lamont, hey, move the truck. I'm going to have it surveyed. Lamont made his speech about how Lamont does that a lot in this one where, hey, that's not right. Just leave well enough alone. And regardless if he's right here, he does make his stance. And Fred's like, no. When he sees the surveyor, Fred gets a little nervous. Let's meet the introduction.
Manuel Eduardo Esteban González Rodríguez.
Oh, hell, I'm dead.
when he says that. I'm done. You know, I'm done. He thinks he's going to play favorites, right, based on culture, nationality. But he doesn't. Fred calls him, says, hey, let's just pick a name out there. Let's pretend the neighbor's name was Fuentes, you know, Fuentes. Well, would that make a difference? And the surveyor he says, why would that make a difference? He said, like, a person's last name shouldn't matter what the markings are on the ground. So he goes out and Fred's excited. He's going to go out there and do it. And then when they go, he's going to go out there. Him and Lamont exchange thoughts on the whole situation. Once again, yes and no, back and forth. They go outside and he's looking and Fred goes down by the other side and Fred's shocked. Why is he shocked?
I don't see no stakes over here.
They're right over here on the boundary line.
The legal boundary line is over here.
That's correct. This is your property.
He's screwed now. He's like, hey, they ain't over here. And they're all the way now right along the side of his house. He barely has any room to even put the truck. And Lamont, of course, I don't know why Lamont's happy. You know, it's yes, your pop who has proven to you, Lamont, that he does know best a lot of times. But in this situation, he should have listened to you and just left well enough alone. Lamont, you should have too, Mr. You want to go fight JoJo Jackson. That wasn't blood coming out of that wasn't, what did he say? That was blood coming out of my nose. You know, he's got to get pride. He should have followed his father's example here, where his father's pride to prove himself right backfired. If it weren't for Grady, Lamont his plan would have backfired with the whole karate against JoJo Jackson. But he sits there and says it serves you right. But you know right away what's going to happen because the guy keeps saying, make sure you don't touch those stakes. Don't move those stakes or we won't know the actual boundary line. So what, of course, Fred going to do? Now, before we get to that, Lamont comes, it's the next day, and Fred has made himself a beautiful breakfast. He's given all his favorites, and Lamont's like, what's up with this? Why are you giving me all my favorite foods?
And that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to bribe me.
Who, me? Why should I try to bribe you? You ain't no vice president.
We know it's for bribery. And here we've already talked about what he said earlier about the bribery. He said, you ain't no vice president. So the fact that he knows it now, and then they start talking, he's like, oh, I just thought maybe because something about the stakes. And Fred's like, well, I don't have to worry about that. I don't have to worry about you telling Julio. You know, I'm not bribing you. We know he is. He's trying to keep him on his side. But he's like, I don't have to worry. I already moved the stakes late in the night. Haha. So Fred, right? A mind full of junk. But then it backfires. Lamont's like, I knew you better than you thought that anyone else would. I know you better than yourself. I went back out and moved the stakes. Now we're in big trouble. So Fred's pissed. And he's like, wait, what? You did what? He rushes out there. And what does he find at the door and the window?
Please, from now on, mind your own business.
He's got the truck. He can't even get out the door. That's horrible. Yeah, I know. First of all, I know it's all a show, but we look at it hypothetically. But I know Lamont's trying to prove a point here and to make it so his dad can't get out because he even locked the back door. Remember? He's got the key and Fred can't get out. But the problem is this is a business. Now if anyone walks up, they can't get to the junk. It's in the back. They can't get inside, right? Because we never see the front door used. You can't even get into the place of business. Bad business, Lamont. That truck has to be parked on the street or you're going to have to park it there and not care what Julio says. So as they're doing that, then Julio comes over, right? And he's like, because Fred wants to get out. He's like, I got to move the stakes. I got to find a way. Julio's like, hey, he's hollering over. He's like, I can't get in. I can't get in. It's blocked. And he's like, come around to the back door. So Lamont goes to let him in. And Fred's like, don't say anything. And then he lets him in. And Fred, oh, man, I wish Fred was like this all the time. We've only seen him like this like one other time with Julio. And that was in the one where at the end where, hey, gracias, right? They shake hands, compadres, because he brought him his favorite soul food. So now he comes in and he's Julio's buddy again. Let's check
Good
this
to
out.
see you. Come right on in, son. Sit down there. Have a nice breakfast with us.
Breakfast? You inviting me for breakfast? Yeah, that's a nice thing to do, man. Muchas gracias.
No, we don't have no grass.
We don't have any of that stuff. So that's when he's like, hey, I got good news. Lamont's going to tell him, he's like, hey, all that stuff, we had a surveyor. Tell him, Pop, right? Tell him, we got a surveyor. Finds out he's got a surveyor and they're going to go check the land. They go around. Meanwhile, Fred takes off and he's missing. You're like, where is he? And Julio's so pumped and he comes out there and let's see Julio's reaction. And where the heck is Fred?
But your land came all the way over to here.
Come on, Fred, no juegue. ¿Me está chumando qué?
Hey, man, I don't believe you mean all this.
That's what I'm saying. There's some funny parts in this, but then you're like, I mean, look, we're already at the end of the episode. This went really quick. There
I
wasn't.
did. How come he didn't come out here and move?
Help! Help! Get me out of here! I'm stuck! Get me out of here!
That's why.
There's nothing that. It's almost like this house smells like there's no smell in this house. It's It smells like lettuce, right? And this episode would be a lettuce episode where there's some funny parts, but I just feel like they're missing maybe the big money grip scene, right? The big thing that pulls you in. And maybe this is it with the car where Fred's stuck there and he can't get out. But I laugh at it because Fred's trying to get out, and then Julio and Lamont are having a good time, but then I get pissed, right? As they're sitting there and he has to apologize, and Fred's like, nope, and then he does. He said, all right, I apologize, right? Julio found out all this is his, and you know Julio's not going to hold him to it. He's not Fred. He's a nice neighbor, he's a great guy, and he's going to share with them. So that's good. It just means now we know they can both use the yard, while before when it was Fred's, only he can use it. Now they can both use it. Maybe this will bring them together. But as he says that, and he does apologize, that's when he's like, do you know what Tio means? And he's like, do you know what Tio means in Spanish? And he's like, no, it means uncle. He's all, say Tio. And I love Fred. We got to see Fred. Just watch him how he's doing it, because I feel real. Because at that stage, I'll be like, look, dude, I apologize. I don't want to do this uncle crap. We ain't little kids holding my arm behind my back. But we have to see, look at Fred, the way he responds to it before he finally does say it.
Tio means uncle. Say Tio.
I feel bad for him. He's like, he doesn't want to do it, and then he has to. He has no choice. He's stuck. They act like they're going to take off. But this whole time you're like, Lamont, what are you doing, dude? Maybe because Lamont knows Julio better than all of us, that, hey, we're still going to get the property. He's teaching his dad a lesson, but Lamont needs to follow his own advice in the future as well. So that's it. That's the episode. We know at the end that they basically, Lamont's sitting there reading the paper, and he's still holding it against him. You know, he blackmails him to go get he wants the paper, right? He's going to have breakfast. He wants the paper. So Fred goes out to get the newspaper, and he comes back, and he's going to get something. He's like, what is it? He said, well, now that it's shared property, I got to go pick up basically Chico's poop. Chico's pooping on the yard, and Lamont doesn't want to go step in those, so he's doing it as a favor for Lamont. So now he's got to take care of it. I'd be like, nah, look, we're sharing. Julio, you still got to clean up your goat crap, because I got a business to run, and if it's going to be good neighbors, you got to at least honor your side. So that's how it ends. Good episode. Good. Not great. Not even close to my top 50. It is one of the few average ones, right? Because we know, I mean, I've even seen Sanford where there was like 6.9 for someone. I'm like, no, that's better. That's like 7.3. That's like, there's episodes in Sanford that I've laughed 10 times more than this episode. That's why I don't think the series Sanford is as bad as it probably gets a reputation sometimes. I'm like, dude, you could take a huge chunk of those, and it's better than a lot of episodes like this. But I love Julio, so I still enjoy watching this one. But it is definitely not top 50. That is it. Let me know your thoughts on it. Favorite moment. Do you think it is 7.4? Would you rate it higher? I almost promise I would be shocked. I would be shocked if anyone says this is their favorite or in top 10. Because if you love Julio like me, man, I'm going to be going after Julio where he's, when they go into business. That will be coming up on that one soon. Remember when they go to Julio as a partner? That's one of the best with Julio. The first one ever with Julio, that's one of the best. The one where, yeah, anyways, there's a bunch before I would even get to this episode. This might, other than maybe the poker player with Arms Crowder, where Julio feels more like it's the character from Barney Miller. Doesn't feel like the same Julio. It feels like the Barney Miller Gregory Sierra character. That's probably the only one, other than this, that I go, I don't really care for. Julio really doesn't do much in that one. But yeah, comment below. I'd be shocked if anyone said this is their favorite. Have a great week. Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. We are at 5K. Yeah, man. Woo, I can't believe it. It took us a year, it took us about 9 months to get to 1,000 subscribers. And since then, in 3 months, we got another 4,000. So I thank everybody from the originals who have been there at the beginning. Right after my first video, we got 50 subscribers really quick. And that's a lot for a new channel. So I'm so thankful for everyone that are still with us from there. I still see comments from people from our first and second and third video that are still with us now. So I appreciate you from the beginning. And I appreciate anyone who just recently came on and said, hey, I love your channel. I like the positivity. I'm here. I love Sanford & Son. Any of that positive stuff. Thank you as well. And have a safe week. Be careful out there. And we will have trivia, posts, and also a Friday fun fact, something coming up. I always love to try to be creative with the channel. So thanks again. Have a great week. Be safe. Peace.